So a quick announcement before we start. Later this month, I am going to be opening my Encouraging Clicks online masterclass to new students. And if you'd like to know more about that and get potentially an exclusive discount when it opens, go to boagworld.com/masterclass. Okay, moving on. So 3 times this week, I found myself thinking about Mr. Killer, my physics teacher from school. Now, despite the somewhat suspect surname, Mr. Killer was one of my favourite teachers, but he did have this annoying habit. He would use the cliche about assumptions a lot. You know the one, when we assume we make an ass out of you and me. Now, just in case you're not a native English speaker and the wit of this escapes you, it's because the word assume is made up of ass, you and me. I know, right? He was a linguistic genius, who knew? So anyway, 3 times this week I found myself thinking about that little saying and in turn Mr. Killer. Let me share those 3 situations with you, as it shows you just how many assumptions we do tend to make in our work. I was on a Zoom call with a university I'm currently working with, and on the call we were discussing the information architecture of a website. And I'd expressed some concerns over the use of terminology on the top level navigation. I was particularly worried about international students who didn't speak English as their first language, and so I suggested a very quick and dirty test in order to find out whether what we had was okay. Unfortunately, my client was so confident it wasn't an issue that they weren't even willing to do that. Of course, my client might be right, but she was assuming, and she didn't actually know, but then neither did I. And a quick test would have taken no more than an hour, and we would have been a lot better informed at the end of it. So anyway, the next day I was speaking to a UX team about prototyping, and they were building a prototype at the time. We were all really excited about a particular feature we wanted to implement when somebody pointed out that compliance would almost certainly have a problem with it. And everybody groaned in agreement and seemed ready to give up on the idea. But I wasn't so willing, as I'd been in this kind of position before. In my experience, it's dangerous to assume how colleagues will react, as they often surprise you. Even if they don't, by approaching them and discussing it rather than just self-censoring it and giving up on the idea without even talking to them, you can often find a compromise when you actually talk to people. Finally, I was on yet another Zoom call. Yes, I do a lot of Zoom calls. And this time I was talking to a freelancer I have been mentoring. And he was super excited because he just won a job that we'd been working on together for a while. And I couldn't help but be a little bit smug because he'd been so worried about how much the client could afford that he kept underpricing the project. And in the end, we'd come up with a compromise whereby we submitted 3 different packages at 3 different price points. And to be honest, this is something I always recommend anyway. Not only had my freelancer won the work, but the client had also selected the most expensive of these 3 packages at almost twice the price of what the freelancer had wanted to quote. So it turns out Mr. Killer was right all along, and I shouldn't have mocked him at school. It's a dangerous business assuming you know how other people will react in situations. People are complicated and unpredictable, and we should always challenge our assumptions. And testing allows us to do that. We can test with users, fairly obviously, but we could also test with our colleagues, and we can test by offering different options and see what people will accept. At the very least, we can see if there are others who share our assumptions, which I guess is why a lot of people hire me as a consultant, so they can bounce things off of a third party. But what about you? What are you working on at the moment? Are you making assumptions that you could actually quickly test? Is there somebody outside of your situation that you could ask to see if others share the same assumptions as you? We should all be looking to avoid making too many assumptions for fear of becoming an arse.